Hello and welcome to part number 11, and this time I want to go here to this border to patch this area here a little bit, so the seam is not as visible as it is now. Of course, I have always in mind that we have maybe a foreground actor from a green screen studio patching this up by itself naturally. First of all, before we patch two different areas here, we have to make certain that we understand which one is the leading one, and that is normally the practical footage. Sometimes we could say also go a little bit in one direction and for the background in the other direction, so we meet in the middle. And then we have to both sides later on enough space, perhaps, hopefully. So if that is done, and we have also measured here the blacks, the mids, and the highlights, so these values are here matching more or less, then we can go here to our patch. And the patch is done normally in the way that we find a space where we can see from that area the most, but also when we have the greatest size of it. Because when we do it when it is way in the background and the camera goes closer to it, the resolution might be not sufficient. So we find a space that is exactly where we see the most and where we have the right resolution. Sorry for the repetition, but that is the most important part. So then I have created here, of course, a floor patch, and I will give you the idea how I have done it. First of all, I have found here with frame 144 the position that I want to have. Then I clicked on this frame, I called up a new camera, called this frame 144, and of course this camera has no animation whatsoever, and it should be normally frozen. That means we have here a protection tag on this camera, like on the camera projection here. Okay, so when this is done, we can go with the projection man, or we can go with our standard rendering and render out a file that has 1.5 times higher the resolution than we have now, just to be on the safe side. With that frame, we go to Photoshop, we mask the area that we want to have, and then we start painting, and we paint something that works in both areas and balance both sides. And let's have a look again. When I switch this on, you can see what I have done here. That is here very rough, but you can see already what I have done here. It works pretty much like balancing out the shadow here, a little bit softer and a little bit darker here on that area. And this is before rendering, and you have seen, of course, the final state. What I would suggest is, of course, to have a plane here pretty much on that level. And that might cause trouble soon or later when we intersect two planes with each other. So I have an extra path for this patch, and that means I can balance later on in my compositing this little patch here very nicely. And let's have a look. It works here very nicely with that movement here. It stays exactly on spot. You have to paint, of course, in Photoshop in this perspective here, but it should be easy. And if it really creates a problem, use the vanishing tool to just paint over it more and more. This goes then, of course, as an extra rendering pass into your compositing, and that is then the simplest way to finally patch this in. Again, I like to render out all these parts, the camera projection, the patch, and this is of course not rendered. This is already footage with an alpha channel. This goes all into separate layers in After Effects, for example, or a Nuke in different nodes. And what I like to do is, of course, to use all these bright areas here later on to blur them a little bit inside of the objects here. That means light wrap, light glow, or I take the whole picture blurred and screen it on top, just a little bit to get that normal edge fringing exactly to work. That is, of course, also a judgment call, and some people don't like it. I like it a lot, but it needs to fit to the rest of the footage, the clip before and after. Okay, thanks for listening. See you in the next one.